I'm going to now move over to Catherine. Um, since we ran such successful pilot at Guardian Life, Catherine, I want to ask you that basis the pilot which you ran, what really informed your decision to extend Sherlock coaching, the AI coaching, to the wisest section of the employees in the organization?
All right. So, great question, Pooja. So, I want to kind of build on a little bit of what Dr. Woodward said around the ability to democratize and scale coaching to so many more people using a digital AI platform for coaching. I think what we've found through COVID and the hybrid work environment is that a lot of people are really burnt out. And this allows us to work with a different group of people who otherwise would not probably receive what we call human coaching, because human coaching has traditionally been typically for our executive and high potentials, and it also can be very costly. And so, what we did during our pilot is we really targeted people who are more individual contributors within our organization, folks who we know have a curiosity for learning. And what we found is that many of them really glommed on to this idea of being able to receive coaching anytime, anywhere. And I think that was a really essential piece of this whole pilot, is that people felt like in the moment they could get assistance working through and thinking through an issue that maybe was tripping them up. And so as a result of that, a lot of our feedback was extremely positive in terms of its ability to help people get unstuck and move forward in their day to day.
Go ahead, Woody.
Yeah, so to touch on some of what Catherine said, I think it's really important to consider the idea that we're talking about human development and human transformation, right? And so what she mentioned was, how do we broaden that umbrella of services and opportunities to help individuals in an organization get their developmental needs met? It's not just the domain of a high-end executive coach working with a C-suite executive, right? If we want to really expand the opportunities and scale, we can't scale enough coaches, right, to work with everybody in the organization, but we can provide alternative types of services like an AI coach or AI developmental tools or even micro learning programs that can be accessible by employees at various different levels at various different stages of their development. So I think it's really important what Catherine's talking about is expanding the opportunity for human development across the organization, not just specifically coaching. And that's an important distinction I think we need to consider, because something Deep mentioned earlier, the idea of an AI coach and acceptance, right? Maybe for older folks, it's a little bit dicier and tougher, what we're seeing in some of the research, but for younger employees, those newer entrants into the workforce, I think they're more native, right, to AI. They're more native to
Yeah.
digital tools and technology. They're more native to even social media tools, right? So they're used to this type of stuff and they're more comfortable. So I think we have to be careful about the decision makers, right, who may be less comfortable making decisions about tools that those who are more comfortable using might actually want to use. So we have to be very thoughtful about which audience we're tapping and we're targeting and how we're going to speak to them and the kind of tools that will resonate well with them.
Yeah.
That said, I think there's a great study to kind of build on some of what Deep was talking about, as well as Catherine, that came out from USC earlier this year. It was in the trying to remember the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, where they looked at responses to narratives written by both human,
Yeah.
right, sample size, as well as ChatGPT, right? And the idea was, how can we respond to human emotional needs, and what does it look like when an AI does it versus a human does it? Not a coach, right? Just a random sample of humans responding to these. They found that the recipients of these responses, when it was blind, rated the AI as more emotionally attuned and more empathetic than the human responders who were writing responses to their needs. So if you take a look at the study, it's fascinating. But what happened though, for those where they actually revealed it's an AI versus a human, it kind of flipped, right? Because of that uncomfort with the uncanny valley of an AI interacting with me. So we still have a ways to go when it comes to adaptation and understanding, but we know that the technology is actually reasonably effective out
Yeah.
there, but it's more about acceptance and the use cases.
Catherine, what did you observe? When we worked together on that, when we were doing the pilot, we signed up some measures, and there were some key performance indicators which you were tracking for measuring the success. How do you believe, the AI coaching platform, which was Sherlock, fared for you all?
Sure. Thanks, Pooja. Yeah, we had a couple of different measures in place. Some of them were quantitative and others were qualitative. In terms of our quantitative measures, we found that we exceeded all the measures that we had set as barometers of success. But I think what was most encouraging was some of the qualitative feedback that we received from our focus groups. We ran about 3 focus groups during the course of the pilot, and it was consistently, we heard from people that it was accessible to them when they needed it, which could have been at 2 o'clock in the morning when they were having trouble sleeping, or on a Saturday while they were doing laundry. So they were able to work through issues. I think the other thing that we heard from people, which was really interesting, is they found it a very psychologically safe way to receive coaching. We actually had a couple people in the pilot who have worked with human coaches, and they went into the whole pilot very skeptical about their experience and walked away, I think, being somewhat awed by the fact that they found it very effective in terms of helping them move forward. And so I think it was less about the quantitative pieces of it, like did we have people coming back and continuing to use it time and time again, but more around what we heard from people in terms of their experience. And I think that would, for me, was really what was the factor in terms of moving forward with this and figuring out how do we incorporate Sherlock into more of the flow of work and how we deliver learning and development opportunities here at Guardian.
Catherine, I know you are eager to speak about this. We've had so many conversations about Sherlock Acumen and the numerous graphs and the recommendations which we went through together in the analytics dashboard. So yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, Cindy really hit on something that resonated with me, and I should have mentioned it earlier. One of the things that I found compelling about Sherlock was Sherlock Acumen, which is on the back end of the app. And as Cindy said, in aggregate, you can start to see what are some of the themes that are percolating amongst your colleagues. And so in my role here at Guardian, I'm the head of organizational effectiveness and learning. And so another part of my job is colleague listening strategy. And so we do our biannual survey to understand what is the sentiment, the level of engagement, satisfaction, and loyalty in the organization. What some of the analytics around Sherlock allows us to do is to validate some of that, but also gives us new insights into what's top of mind for our colleagues. And so that, I think, just helps in terms of strengthening our colleague listening strategy. But it also gives us ideas and insights into what we can do more of to support our colleagues. So for example, Sherlock Acumen will come up with recommendations that people leaders can implement to better support their colleagues in day to day. It also starts to elevate some of the themes that are coming up and will suggest opportunities for the organization to consider providing learning opportunities, whether they're training classes or experiences, to help build some of the muscles and skill sets that we need to. So it's a really powerful part of the tool that selfishly I love because it helps to augment another part of my job.
Catherine, when we were in one of the focus groups, one of the users popped up saying that she was being coached by a human as well. So she was very skeptical getting into leveraging Sherlock, and then how dazzled she was based on how she felt. And she specifically spoke about how she felt non-judged, which is surprising, though coaches are not supposed to judge. But that safety which you're talking about was clearly something which we heard repeatedly from the users in all these focus groups. Any additional perspectives, Woody, from you specifically on this?
Yeah, sure. And I think it's great. Catherine shared some great data around the use, the efficacy, certainly from folks at more junior levels. I think the 24/7 availability when she mentions, 2 a.m. or on a Saturday when I want to connect with a coach or I need possibly a sounding board or to be pointed towards resources or anything that would be helpful in my continued development. I think that's the advantage of digital technology and certainly AI. I also want to step back and remind everybody, my day job is educating and training professional executive coaches. And I still am a firm believer in the profession of executive coaching. And I think that certainly when we look at the more senior levels and we look at the more nuanced and complex needs of advanced leadership or senior leadership in organizations, I don't see any replacement for a human, professionally trained, an educated coach right now at that level. I still am a coach myself. I still work with senior leaders myself. But that said, I think that the combination or use of integration of AI tools in a coaching engagement can be helpful. Cindy had mentioned earlier the idea of a tool that has good memory. It remembers and it captures data, it captures information where I rely on my notes, and sometimes my notes a little bit shorthand, right? So it is good to use those to integrate these tools with any human coaches. But when it comes to scaling at the lower levels of an organization where you have much larger population with still important needs for development, I think the use of AI can be very, very valuable, and various different types of AI tools, AI coach, AI nudging, AI dashboards, data collection, and feedback, and so on. I think these are all really, really important. But at the end of the day, we have to remember, right, even though AI can mimic emotions and it can mimic experiences, it doesn't actually have emotional experience, and AI is not sentient. These are really advanced language prediction machines that can mirror back context and what is being fed into it. And of course, Pooja had mentioned, obviously, the development of Sherlock has been somewhat different and non-reliant on just a general LLM or searching the web, which is very important to have those guardrails, because we do have to keep in mind safety. And the safe use of any AI tools is really, really critical before we deploy any of these tools. I know that Catherine's gone through that exercise and that experience, and that is an important reminder for anyone out there watching.
Sorry, can I just a very quick one? I think I really what Woody says really resonates in terms of, yes, there is a place where a human coach is a critical essential. Period. They've got to be, and at senior levels. Having said, me being that Imagineer, and I'm quite an R1 from thinking preference, I think Sherlock, even there, something like, or not Sherlock, or maybe just if you talk about Gen AI coach, does have a place in terms of augmenting that human coaching. What I mean is, say a CEO of an organization is headed to a board meeting and does not have access to his or her coach at that time, and suddenly wants on the fly, what are the two key questions I could ask my board today? Or if my board asks these questions, what's one of the good ways to respond? And Sherlock could play a role there on the fly. That kind of stuff.
As a rehearsal tool.
Yeah. So it has a place, but limited, but definitely has a great use. Maybe as a sounding board, if nothing else. Just a bit of a sounding board.
Catherine, go ahead. Do you have some additional thoughts?
So I'd love to add to what Deep is saying, because now that we've gone through the pilot and we're thinking about how do we move forward with the licenses that we've purchased, one of the places that we're looking to use it is as a supplement to some of our learning opportunities. So as our frontline leaders, for example, go through what we call our REACH program for frontline leaders, we want to give them access to Sherlock so that as they learn a skill, whether it's around crucial conversations, giving feedback, having a difficult conversation, we'll give them the tools so that once they've gone through the actual learning module, they can then use Sherlock to supplement what they've learned and to maybe help them prepare for a difficult conversation and think through what might they say and how might they how might they approach that conversation. So I do agree that there are so many ways that we can integrate it into how people work. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with our Gen Z and our young millennials. I do think we can use it with a pocket of our organization, like our frontline leaders.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear that. Cindy, were you adding something?
Yes, please. I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to mention again safety and security, both technological security, organizational, kind of data security issues, as well as the psychological safety issues. And just to speak to the fact that Sherlock is as confidential as a human conversation, where the organization isn't receiving details of the conversations, but rather at a high level, some themes
Yeah.
about the types of conversations that might be happening organizationally, which from a measurement standpoint, where I know many organizations are very tired of surveys, and the responses to such surveys often are quite low and not terribly statistically significant and reliable. Having that chatter and understanding those themes could be incredibly helpful, as Catherine mentioned, to supplement or augment training that needs to happen or other organizational communications. But just to highlight the safety, both psychological safety, non-judgmental in the conversations itself, as well as the safety of organizational data, because of the guardrails that have been carefully put forward for Sherlock. It really is a valuable tool in any organization's arsenal of learning tools. And
Yeah.
again, where you can share this growth mindset, this love of curiosity in an age where we're frankly expecting everyone to adopt, AI in different ways. Uh, Teaching people how to be curious and expanding their questioning abilities is useful in different ways there as well. So in some ways, Sherlock is quite able to model behaviors that are going to be beneficial to our human evolution in business over the coming years.